Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another broadcast of In the Trenches. I'm very excited to be talking with Matt Astifan today, who is the founder of WebFriendly and the director of Internet Masterminds, which is the largest internet marketing meetup in the world with over 7,000 members. He's also the creator of Social Media Director Certification Program, which is a program designed to start or enhance your career as a social media manager, which is what we're going to be digging into today, specifically about how you could potentially start your own business in as a social media director, or if you're already doing that, how you can grow it. And then I think we'll also probably look a little bit at how really anybody in any kind of like freelance or consulting capacity can maybe take some of these tips or tricks that Matt will share with us today and apply them to what you're doing. So Matt, thank you for being on the show with us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Tom.
Absolutely. So before we dig into, the meat and potatoes of this, which is all about, social media manager, like becoming a social media director or a social media manager, how did you get started in this? Like, how do you get to the point where you're, teaching people how to do this?
Man, like a lot of realtor, it's funny how many people I meet that start in the real estate space. I was a realtor and I had no sales skills or marketing skills. I went right into it the first time. I was like, an entrepreneur, a business person. Prior to that, I was working in the film industry. And I came into it thinking, hey, I'll figure all this stuff out. And, realtors, if you make one sale, you make $10,000 in commissions, right? And I was imagining myself being some really rich realtor. And after my first year in real estate, I had over $30,000 in credit card debt. And I went to my managing broker at the end of the year and I said, I'm broke. I've got no sales skills. I've got no marketing skills. What should I do? And he's like, at the time I was 23 years old or something. He's like, you're young. Why don't you go figure out this internet marketing stuff? And it just so happened that about a week prior to that, I'd met a guy who just came from the States. He was originally from India. He'd only been in the States for a few years, had a thick Indian accent, and he was telling me about SEO. And my first question when he started explaining to me the concept of SEO, I was like, is this even legal? I thought it was like some illegal hack that he had going on. And so he started explaining to me how the whole thing worked. And so I went back to him after speaking to my manager and I said, hey, can you teach me about internet marketing? So he said, I'll mentor you in internet marketing if you could help me sell my internet marketing services. So for the next couple of years, I started selling SEO and websites. And during my free time and in the evenings, I used to read Mashable and TechCrunch and follow guys like Gary Vee and Guy Kawasaki and all these other, pioneers in the social media space. And I just started learning so much about social media, but it took up so much of my time. It was my passion. I just enjoyed learning about this stuff. But then, I wasn't getting paid to learn it. I was taking up so much time to do it. So I said, how can I continue doing what I love, which is learning about this stuff? So I decided to start teaching workshops. So I did my first workshop. It was a weekend workshop. I charged $300 for it. I got 12 people into it. And I was like, this is awesome. In one weekend, I made, it was $3,000 or whatever. And at the time, that was how much I usually made in an entire month. So I said, hey, I could, go the entire month, just work one weekend of the entire month and make the same amount that I'm making working for this company. And so that's when I decided to really, pump up my game in the social media space and start learning about the world of information marketing and how to host events and how to actually teach people and educate people on the topic.
That's awesome, man. And so real quick, like think about that in the context of real estate, hyper competitive space. You learn the marketing aspect of the social media. Did you find things like that? Were you at like the cutting edge of this then, like kind of implementing the stuff in that industry before you kind of moved full time into teaching others?
You mean in the real estate industry?
Yeah.
No, I was always like kind of avoiding it because I always thought, I was a failure. I call myself the failed realtor, right? I was such a failure in real estate. But it's funny that now it's like over the last few months, we took on some clients that were realtors and we started to have some great success with them. So before this call started, we were kind of chit-chatting a little bit about this funnel I'm building for realtors. It's working really well. But at the time, no, I didn't work with realtors. My first kind of niche that I went into was the business coaching niche. And the reason for that was I figured if I did a good job for these business coaches, well, they have all these other businesses they work with that could recommend me to them, which worked.
Interesting.
So that was the first kind of niche that I got into, and that's kind of how I first started my business.
Interesting. Okay, well now let's get to this, and maybe this question ties in, or we can cover it later. But okay, so you target business coaches, but you're not a business coach. This is your first time doing it. How'd you target them? How'd you get that many people on board to your first event? I mean, that's a challenge for somebody who's just starting from scratch.
Yeah, well, for my first training, what happened was we started it with a meetup group with internet masterminds, and I used to go up there and I would just teach some stuff. I was teaching people how to sign up for Twitter, right? It was really basic. This is 2009,
cutting edge.
Right? This is before Justin Bieber and Ashton Kutcher made Twitter blow up, right? It was Justin Bieber, Ashton Kutcher, and then Oprah, and then everyone was then on Twitter, right? So this is pre-Justin Bieber. People didn't even know what Twitter was. I would have to explain to them what Twitter was before even getting into how to create an account. So that's how I kind of initially kind of started doing my paid workshops, which is getting out there and speaking. I attended a Toastmasters event, and they told me that the only way to get good at speaking is just to speak. I always had this thing where I feel like nothing really matters. You can get totally embarrassed and you can go on stage and make a fool of yourself. And yeah, it might affect you and impact you, and you might be really embarrassed about it, but to everybody else, they're going to forget about it by next week, right? So I've always kind of had that train of thought. So that's how I kind of put myself out there, because I was like, no one's going to remember this in a month from now. No one's going to remember in a year how bad this presentation was if I screw it up. And that was kind of how I had guts to kind of go out and do that. But yeah, initially what I would do to find these business coaches is I would find people who were really old school, who were doing things in old school ways. So for example, you ever gone to one of those presentations where they kind of bribe you to go to their seminar with a free chicken dinner?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Not quite to that extreme, but yes.
I went to one where they gave you a free iPod, and it was actually an imitation of an iPod. It wasn't even an Apple iPod, and just for going to the event. So you had to stay to the end and they'd give you an iPod. And so I would go to those kind of events because I'm okay, those guys are really old school. You could do what they're doing there at a live event that costs them tens of thousands of dollars to put on, right? It's the event cost for the room and, the stage and the sound and all that. But plus they're doing direct mail to get people to go out to these things, right? And you could do that exact same thing on a webinar, and you can get people online to attend a webinar. Right. So I would go attend these events, and then I would go to the back and I would talk with the staff, and I'd be like, hey, I'm a digital marketer, and, I can help you guys emulate what you're doing here in the real world online for a fraction of the cost. Would you be interested in giving it a shot? And my first few deals, I would do it on a performance base only. So I would only get paid if they made a sale. And I guess they were skeptical that they would even make sales, so they agreed to my commission structure of getting a high percentage. I did one deal where I got 50% of any sale that they would generate. Later on, I scaled it back, and now it's usually around 10 or 20%. So I would do this, and I would just find people who were doing old school marketing and doing really well at it, and just translate what they were doing in the real world online. And that's how I found my first clients.
Well, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about that. When, did it work, right? I'm curious, taking that, because I think that's a great way to get started, is offering that's how I got started, was just taking a percentage on performance and nothing else, which is, pretty scary, but did it work out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I did one deal, I remember, where there was this area where you really have to scale the unscalable, right? There was this one guy that I was working with, great coach, great business coach. He had lots of success. He had been doing coaching for 20 years, but he was afraid of computers. He just was not internet savvy. And when I tried to get him to do his first webinar, he was so worried. He asked me if I would actually come to his place and help him on the webinar. And I explained to him, and I was there with him. I showed him how to use GoToWebinar, and I explained to him how simple it was, but he had this fear he would screw it up. So I actually went to his apartment building, went into his apartment, sat in his office, and I actually sat there and actually hit, broadcast. I hit the record button on it. And, I sat there in the back the entire time while he did the presentation, just in case something went wrong. Right. And his deal was that he would give me half of all the sales that we generated. And, it was a monthly recurring fee of between $500 to $1,000. And we ended up generating a recurring fee of, I think it was about $6,000, a little over $6,000. So that meant $3,000 per month to me from that one webinar. which was huge to me at the time, because at the time I wasn't making a whole lot of money. And all of a sudden now I've got this $3,000 per month, which actually took care of all my expenses at the time, even more than that. Like I could have not even, I could have retired, right? and those payments came for like 2.5 years, right? Because he was a great business coach, right? I mean, some of them kind of scaled back after some time, but he was paying me for 2.5 years by the time the last person dropped off, because he was a great business coach and people stuck around for a long time. He really helped people grow their businesses. He also would earn a percentage of income that he'd help businesses increase. So he wasn't only making that monthly fee, he was also making more money on the back end. But I just got I got a percentage of just the initial fee. So it worked out really well for me. Continue to do it. I mean, now I charge a base fee as a commitment, because now I've got a few more case studies under my belt. I've been doing digital marketing now for almost 10 years. So I only take on clients that I'm confident that, I could generate them a significant amount of revenue. And I want them to be committed to me as much as I'm committed to them. So if someone's just starting out, I would definitely recommend the performance-based model. That way, you don't have to feel any pressure like, oh, this person's going to pay me all this money. What if I don't bring them any results? I'm going to be such a fraud, that kind of fear. Instead, you just say, hey, I'll work on a performance base only. And then when you make a sale, would you mind giving me a percentage of those sales? And most, smart business coaches and most smart entrepreneurs would say, hell yeah, right? As long as that percentage kind of makes sense, that percentage is around what their current acquisition cost is, why would they say no, right? It's free clients, right? It's free sales, right? You've got a digital marketer working for you for free, right?
That's awesome. And I'm actually in the point where I have like products where I would be happy to give away a good percentage for somebody to just come in like that and say, yeah, I'll just do it on performance only, things that have sold. So I know that opportunity is there, like across the board, probably in many different capacities. If you're just looking for it and you find the people who have these programs, have these, whether services or products, and just saying, hey, if I work on a performance and I get you sales, and can you give me a piece of it? Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would say yes to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key thing here, and this is the key part of the model, is that you only do marketing for people that sell high ticket products and services. Always. So only people who are selling something like over $2,000, right? Like $1,000 maybe, but really over $2,000. And I'm looking for at least a $2,000 lifetime value. And I'll use that lifetime value over just a year. Okay. Usually lifetime value is calculated over 2 years, but within a year, it's got to be at least $1,000. So this could also work if you're doing marketing for like a yoga gym or like a CrossFit gym where someone's paying like $200 a month or $100 per month. And on average, they stay for at least 12 months, for example, right? Another niche that this works great in is in the info product world. That's the kind of world that we're in, right? There's very high profit margins. You're looking for businesses that have at least a 30% profit margin, right? So that means that when they make a sale, there's a lot of profit in there, so that way they can afford to give you your commission. And I personally only work with businesses that have been established, so they've been around for at least 5 years. And I have this rule where I'll only work with people who are, far richer than I am, right? So you don't want to work with any kind of like startups or someone who's struggling or, like they're, on their last dime or, no friends, no family, right? You're working with established businesses that are doing hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in sales, and you're just going to build this one funnel, this one marketing campaign for them and take a percentage of all those sales.
No, I love it. And it's great advice. It sounds a little harsh, but, for the person who's just starting out, like, oh man, I wish I could get that. But like, I see that it's a death spiral to have like two beginners working together to like make something happen. I mean, sometimes it works out. I mean, I say that I started from scratch and I collaborated and did a lot of that stuff. But man, there's just a lot of things you don't know. And it's tough. So if you're working with somebody who's just getting started, it's not a good value prop. I mean, I just don't see it working out if you're going to work on commission only, because if they don't have their stuff straight, it's just challenging proposition.
Especially if they don't have their marketing positioning down, right? Like if you do their marketing and it doesn't work, they're going to blame you and you're going to feel bad about it too. But it's like, if their product isn't already selling, if it isn't in demand, that now you've got to try to figure out how to make it in demand. And that's a much bigger problem to try to solve, right? That's something for someone who's more experienced, who's going to understand the brand positioning and, all that kind of stuff, the copywriting, but if they already have it down and they're just doing it like in the real world, they're just not doing it online, or they're not doing it through a certain avenue. Like they're not using Facebook, they're not using YouTube, or they're not using Twitter, or whatever it is, right? You could just like take what they're already doing on a different avenue and just plug it into a new channel and then scale it up.
Yeah, and I think this is a good transition point, because I know the core subject of what we want to talk about was like how to become, a six-figure freelance social media director, like how to become like that person who's established doing this. So I know we kind of gone off on some tangents, though I think are still relevant with some of these questions. But walk me through that. Like, say we've already gotten to that point that we just discussed. Maybe it's commission only at first, but you get to that point where you're able to maybe find some clients you're working for them. Like, how do you get to that level where you're making that six figures annually specifically in social media?
Yeah, I mean, like when we talk about our social media director program, we do so much more than just social media because we're also building the sales funnel, right? And the sales funnel is not necessarily like a social media thing, but you need to know where you're sending your traffic to convert cold traffic into warm leads, into hot leads, into actual sales. And so when you're first starting out, you want to first get a case study under your belt. So that's where you work for a performance base only in a certain niche that you want to get into, right? We talked about business coaches, info products, fitness studios. I also did this for events. I used to sell like exhibitor booths and trade show booths is another great niche. Realtors that we talked about. So there's a lot of great niches out there. So once you build a case study in one, you want to publish that case study. You want to put it out on your blog. If you don't have a blog, you can use a platform like LinkedIn Pulse or Medium, and you want to showcase what you did for that client. Now you got a successful case study that you can shop around and show other people within that industry, right? Not the direct competitors of your past client. If you're working with a realtor in one city, go to realtors in another city, right? If you're working for an event in one niche, an event is an event. If you could sell exhibitor booths for one event, you could do it for another, right? And so once you have that, you shop it around, and now you could charge a premium price. Now you can go and say, hey, I'll build this funnel for you. And you've already got the template because you did it for your case study. So I could do the same strategy for you here, and I'll set up the funnel for you, and I would charge a minimum of $2,500. You could even charge $10,000. There's people who charge a lot more than that for a funnel. But a fair medium price is about $2,500. And then you'll say you're also going to get a percentage of all the sales that come through your funnel. And it's negotiable, but typically it's about 10%, right? And then you're also going to manage your ads. Now, I recommend once you're experienced that you start charging a minimum fee of at least $1,000 per month. And that's when you're charging $1,000 per month just to be able to help generate sales for them. So that does not include their advertising budget. But it's important that you're able to use the advertising budget to generate sales from them so you can get your commissions. If you're working with a client that only wants to grow their engagement and grow their audience, and you're not really generating sales for them directly, then you should be charging more per month, something in the range of $3,000 to $5,000 per month. That would usually be a larger company, multi-million-dollar company that would usually want to do that sort of strategy. But most of the small to mid-sized businesses, people who are growing, they're looking directly for, let's make some sales. So you build a funnel, $2,500, you run their Facebook ads, $1,000, plus you get, for example, 10% of all the sales that come through your funnel that you built, right? So that's kind of your model. So based on those numbers, if you were able to generate them just, $100,000 in sales over 12 months, right? You're averaging about $25,000 over the entire year from building their funnel, the monthly fee plus your percentage, right? So from there, you just have 4 clients based on, some minimal numbers, based on the numbers we just talked about, you've now made $100,000. So the model is about not having a lot of clients and not having a lot of employees, and instead having fewer clients, but focusing more attention on those clients. Whenever I work with a client, I look at it like I'm a partner in that business, right? So now I'm working with realtors, and it's like I'm a realtor. It's like I have a real estate business, right? I help people buy and sell homes, right? But I'm just helping connect them with the realtor, right? So it's like I'm more of in the operations side of just, the marketing and the strategy, but someone else is actually handling the actual clientele. And that's what's beautiful about this business, because that way you can have like a real kind of lifestyle business where, once you kind of set it up, you're just monitoring it after that. It's not going to take you, full-time hours to monitor 4 clients, but initially it takes a lot of time just to get them set up, right?
Right. And I might have missed this because I was like applying this to my own business as you were walking through it. So I kind of went deep into it for a second. Were you saying kind of that last point that you mentioned the management of these accounts? So if you have, 4 or 5, you eventually bring somebody in to just manage. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I do. And what I've done is I've now actually just hired my first employee. Okay, so I've been in business for nearly 10 years. I just got my first employee. Prior to that, I only hire contractors. So personally, because I'm teaching a program to people on how to do social media, so I actually hire out of people who take my program. And so I've been blessed to be able to have people who understand my model and understand how the whole thing works. And what I'll do is I'll hand off those projects to a contractor who will then continue to run the ads over time. So we have a set system kind of how we create our ads. We'll create a batch of ads. We actually create a total of, I don't want to get too technical here on an audio-based podcast, but we create 5 ad sets inside of Facebook, 16 ads per ad set. So it's 80 ads that we create, and we're split testing these 80 ads until we find our winners. And then we have a process for split testing those ads moving forward. So once I create the initial campaign and I come up with all the hooks and all the different themes for all the different ads and what all our audiences are, that part I'll do myself. And it does take a lot of time to get all that stuff done. It could take between 4 to 8 hours to figure out all that stuff and build it all out. But then after that, I'm able to hand it off to somebody else who knows the system, knows the process to continually split test and optimize those ads over time. And I'm always looking at the funnel and how we can optimize every step of the way for the funnel. So that's kind of the model where if you didn't want to have any employees, you could just hand off, a project where with that base, you're getting of $1,000 per month. I mean, you could hire someone else for $500 per month and then actually run the ads for you and you take care of all the client management side.
Yeah, which to some people I think is probably the most brutal side of it. How do you manage the clients in this case? What do you recommend?
Well, first of all, you got to choose your clients wisely, right? So if you get somebody who's you don't think you're going to work well with, don't work with them, right? But the whole thing here is that there's not a lot of clients, right? So you've only got 3 to 4 clients that you're working with. Maybe at the most you got 5, right? So it's not going to be a lot. It's like every client that I work with, they're great to work with. They're great entrepreneurs. They say that you will become the equal sum of the 5 people who you spend the most time with. And if, you're working 8-hour days, most of your day is being spent talking with and, communicating with these sort of people. So if you're dealing with high level entrepreneurs, I mean, they're not going to be there to ride your ass and, figure out what you're doing and that sort of thing. Cause they got other things to worry about it. And you've got their social media handled. And if you're working and you're motivated to get them results because that's what you get paid on, you're going to be getting them results, right? You got to get them results. Otherwise, you should drop the client if you can't get them results, right? So for me personally, I'm just very picky about which clients I take on. I make sure they kind of understand the process. They have a willingness to invest into Facebook advertising. They know it's a long-term play. They know that if we spent the first $500 and we don't see any results, but we get the data, so we have a better idea of what is going to work and what's not going to work. They understand that, right? So Facebook ads is a long-term play. So it's all about choosing the right kind of clients and then not having a lot of clients. I think the agency model of getting 20 clients or 40 clients, I know guys who have companies like that and they hate it, and it's stressful, right? So whereas my business model has always been to have the fewest amount of clients, but make the most results for each of the clients.
It's funny that you say that. I've done that without it being, purposeful, like kind of getting to that point. Cause I was like, that's exactly what I saw. I was like, I know I could probably bring on more, but I'd rather have less and make more. And it's just it's just so much better. Right. And I know that the compulsion as well, just keep bringing on more clients, but it's not always a winning proposition. And then of course, do you want to build an agency or would you just rather have kind of, and I don't know if this is a bad term or anything, but like a lifestyle design type employment, like job that you do that is, enjoyable. You're good at it. You make good money and you have a few clients and it's easy enough to manage. Do you find that you have like these conversations with people a lot? Does that ever come up? Like this idea of like more clients versus less, or is this something that typically when people come through their program, that's exactly what they're looking for?
Well, I think most people have never really thought about it as well. They think they need a lot of clients. Like I started by thinking I needed a lot of clients. I had multiple packages. I had a $300, a $500, and $1,000 per month package. Most people would start with the lower end packages. So I realized later that I was actually just cannibalizing my sales because they would have taken the higher package if I didn't offer them a lower package. I remember I got to about 15 clients where I just had too much work going on, started having like literally stomach pains from stress. And then I wasn't performing. I wasn't giving them results. And I always had this fear of like, I don't want to be a fraud. I want to be the person known for getting people results, that sort of thing. And so I knew what I wanted to be. So then I started dropping the clients, and I would drop the ones who weren't willing to commit at least $1,000 per month. And what I noticed was anyone who would pay $1,000 or more, like they were more committed, they were more serious, and they perceived me as more of an expert. Where someone would just willing to, pay out $300 a month, and then they're just like, oh, let's give it a try. Let's see what Matt can do. And they're always kind of critiquing the work, Whereas when you charge a higher price, you get better clients, you get better people to work with.
It's so funny, isn't it? I know it's easier. It's you can hear this, and if you're just starting out, you're like, yeah, well, that's what you say, but it's tough to charge those higher prices. And I get it when you're just starting out, but I've experienced the same thing. And it seems like that's a consistent experience. Like if you charge very little, you just get absolutely crapped on by people, sometimes, not all, but the more you charge, like the easier it gets. It's incredible. The people who hire me now at the higher prices that we charge now versus like 3 years ago, which is like, I laugh at what I used to charge. It's night and day. They leave me alone. They know I'm doing my job. They're getting the reports. And granted, I'm better and more professional at what I do anyway. So granted, maybe part of that was warranted back then. But I think the big thing is just that. It's charging a price point, having that positioning in the marketplace to some degree of being an expert, or at least being very good at what you do. And people knowing like, yep, I'm hiring you because I know you're good at what you do. And I'm just going to let you do your magic. And I think that's a great position to get to if you can. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. The other thing I've noticed as well is like when you're dealing with companies that, if you're targeting companies that are doing hundreds of thousands or at least like $1 million plus per year, and you come to them and say, I'll manage your social media for $300 per month, they'll immediately think you're amateur or you're not going to do enough for them. Right. But, I right now I'm going through the experience of trying to hire a branding company to redo our visual identity. And I talked to some designers that, charge a very low amount. And as soon as they say the low amount, I'm like, maybe they're not professional enough. Maybe they're not an expert enough. Then I go to these other companies that are charging like literally 10 to 20 times more than these other ones, right? And I'm like, oh, they must be experts or they wouldn't charge that much, right? So it's like internally I'm thinking it, but I also know that pricing creates, perception, right? So I know that internally. So I'm also diagnosing that, right? At the same time, like I was recently shopping for a new SUV, right? And I'm going to Mercedes and, I went to all these different luxury SUV places. And I remember I went to Range Rover. And I had always perceived Range Rover as being like a higher end luxury kind of vehicle. And I didn't even know if it was going to be in my price range. And I went there and realized that they're actually priced much lower than the other luxury SUVs. And I immediately kind of thought less of them, because I said, oh, well, Mercedes is charging the most. Audi was second. BMW was third. And then Range Rover was fourth, right? So it also created perception in my mind as well, was like Mercedes was the best because they were slightly, I don't know, and again, it was internal because I understood the marketing, right? Like I was just kind of perceiving it in that kind of sense. So yeah, when you charge more, you say the price, people will perceive you as more of an expert. So another positioning you could take is saying, this is something we actually put into our proposals, but it's real, right? So it's not like we're faking it, but we'd say, hey, look, this funnel normally would cost you $10,000 for me to build this for you. But if you're interested, what I could do instead is I'll do this funnel for you for just $2,000 and you just pay me a percentage of your sales, 10%, let's just say, right? Whatever you guys end up negotiating. And then you say at any time, if you want to cancel this agreement and you don't want to pay me the percentage, what you could do is you just pay me another payment of $7,995. I'll hand the funnel over to you and you don't have to pay me another commission again. Right. So now they're perceived at they're getting $10,000 value, but they're only investing $2,000 and then paying you a commission as you get results. And then once, it blows up, they're like, you know what? It's no longer worth paying Matt those commissions. They just pay me off $8,000 and shake hands. And, it's a good business deal. It's done. So that's another way that you can kind of position yourself as like charging a higher price, but then discounting it because you're going to get that commission.
So when people go through your program, do you have, maybe this is kind of how you run your certification in particular, I'm curious about. Do you have any kind of like thing where it's like, people are going through it, they're going to learn these techniques, they're going to learn, how to build this kind of business and be a great, social media director, manager, that kind of thing. They come in, if they're starting from scratch, is that the typical clientele that people come in to you with? Like ththey don't really have a background in social media, or what's like that experience for you?
Yeah, we do have some people that come in and, they're brand new. They're just looking for a brand new career. They've never done internet marketing before and they're just coming into it, right? Then we got people who are like working for a company. They're employed. They want to become a freelancer. And then we have people who are currently doing social media management, but, they're not making six figures. They're usually between the $30,000 to $50,000 mark per year. So those are kind of the markets. The people who get the fastest results, of course, are the people who are already kind of experienced into it, get into understanding the business model. And we have a very structured process for like, here's what you will do, here's what you will not do, right? If you do this, you charge that much. If you do that, you'll charge this much. So I learned a long time ago that when you give people choices, they'll procrastinate on making a decision. So I basically took choices out of my training and I said, just do it this way. Yeah. Just this model works. And it's actually I only teach what I actually do, right? Like this is actually my pricing. And I'll say, it's like, yeah, you could charge $1,000 per month and $2,500 per funnel. But hey, I've been doing this for nearly 10 years. So I might charge them $10,000 to build their funnel. And I might charge them $2,000 per month or whatever. Plus, instead of charging them 10%, I'll charge them 20, because I have gotten more case studies under my belt, I've got more reputation. I can do that. You can't just come out of the gate and be like, charging premium prices and you're new. People will see right through that. So you got to come through it authentically and say, hey, look, I'm new, but I'm just, taking this course from, this guy or whoever it is, right? So I'm learning. I know what to do. I just want to put it into practice. So I'll work for you for free. You just give me an advertising budget for Facebook. I usually recommend $500 per month advertising budget, and give me a percentage on all the sales that I help you generate. That would be the starting point. And then as you build a successful case study, that's when you really scale it up. And I'll just tell you one quick story about a case study I built where I did this guy, it was in my mastermind group. He was doing an event where he wanted to sell exhibitor booths at his event. He wanted to sell them between $1,000 to $2,000 each. And he had 96 booths to sell. And he was in our mastermind. He's like, how should I sell these booths? So I had this funnel that I built a long time ago where it's just an application funnel, right? People are very familiar with it, right? So it's really good for business coaches to get new clients. I also use it for my own mentoring programs. So I said, why don't you put an application form on your website so people have to apply to get a booth instead of like a buy now button, which is what he was planning. So he loved the idea. He talked to me afterwards. He's like, let's implement it. So I'm like, okay, cool. We implemented it. We ended up spending $3,300 on Facebook ads, and we generated $250,000 in sales, which blew my mind. Like that was by far the best ROI I've ever gotten for anybody, right? And I was just so blown away at how that worked. And then from that, I started talking about the case study, right? I actually published the case study explaining like how we did it. And then other event organizers approached me and they said, hey, could you build this funnel for us? Right. And I had this one guy where he wanted to work with me and I had this iffy feeling about him. And I didn't really want to work with him. So he said, can I come in and meet you? This and that. And I'm like, okay, you can come and meet me, but I charge $1,000 for in-person meeting. He's like, okay. And I was trying to get him to say no, right? And he said yes. So he came to the meeting and then I explained to him how the whole funnels work. And then I said, it'll be $3,000 to build the funnel because I already had the template already made. And then 20% of the sales. And then he goes, I'll give you $5,000. And he literally had the cash in his pocket. And he gave me $5,000 and agreed to 20% of the sales because he was so excited to work with me because he knew I had a proven system. Right. So it's like, that's the effect of having a successful case study. Right. And it's like, and I went into a market that I'd never been into before. And I made that case study based on principles that I learned in a different market and it worked. And then I created a new niche for myself.
Interesting. Do you think like some of while you're focused on the social media aspect of this, does this work for other types of freelancers in other capacities? Or is this, because I do affiliate marketing in some capacity, like that's a big part of what I do. I think there's a lot of similarities. It's obviously structured slightly different, but I think a lot of what you're discussing applies to some degree. Do you think this works in other cases where other people want to be like either running a freelance type company or freelance, like they want to freelance in some sort of space, I guess, where there's marketing or sales related, but are there any other spaces where what you're saying kind of applies?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're in a space where you are directly helping people generate sales, everyone wants to know what's the ROI. Like I was talking to like a PR company, right? Because I want to get more PR. And I'm like, yeah, so what do you think we can expect? They're like, well, it's going to cost, $5,000 per month. You have to commit for 6 months, right? I'm sure you probably heard these before, right? And I'm like, well, so what am I going to get? Like, what can you guarantee that I'm going to get from that? And they're like, we'll get you at least like 1 or 2 interviews or something. Like, I can't remember what they told me. And I was like, but that's not very good. Like, that's not a very good ROI. What am I going to do with that, right? So if they instead came and said, yeah, we'll do a campaign, brand new campaign, we'll promote this product, and we'll do all your PR for it, and any sales you generate from that, we'll take half, right? Then I'd be like, let's go for it. That sounds awesome. Let's go for it, right? So, most PR companies, they're not committed to making sales. That's not what PR is really about. But that's just an example. If someone did come out and say that they were a PR person and says, yeah, I will help you generate more sales and we'll be able to track it. Let's create a custom campaign that only I'll promote for you. You don't promote it anywhere else. Then they could work on a performance model. If you're like a graphic designer, right, get into the niche of building sales funnels, right? I use ClickFunnels for all my sales funnels. And, I just talked to a graphic designer earlier who's building out sales funnels, and she just charges a set fee to design it. But she could easily say, yeah, I'll build your funnel for this fee, plus I get a percentage of all the sales that come out of it. And I'll also optimize it. I'll do split tests. So every month we'll do a new split test, and I'll design new variations to your page to continuously optimize it to the maximum performance. So that's how a designer can apply it, right? If you're in the affiliate marketing space and you're already just getting commissions, but you're getting commissions without a base. So if you're just doing affiliate marketing and you find a product or a business that you want to promote, maybe you can work with them directly and say, hey, how about you pay me a certain fee? And, you work directly with them to help drive some sales to their business, right? So you basically work on a contract basis with them and get commissions. I think those, I've heard copywriters suggested before, which I think with copywriting, it's hard. I've had copywriters say, hey, I'll write all your email sequences. You give me a cut of your sales. It didn't really work because, I've done so much work to build my list and nurture that list and stuff. It's like an email isn't going to be the only driving factor. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, but when we're getting people from that are cold, right, or warm or whatever, right, and then turning those people into sales, then it would make sense. But turning my current prospects into a sale, well, they're not buying just because of the email. They're buying because they've known me for the last, 8 or 9 years, right?
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Well, Matt, I know we've taken up more time than you should have given us, but I appreciate that. Thank you for answering the questions and giving us like a glimpse into this. Where can people reach out to find you and maybe check out some of your programs?
Yeah, if you go to webfriendly.com, we're actually in the process of publishing a ton of blog posts. We decided that we want to give away as much of our information away for free. And what people are really paying for is the mentorship and the templates and tools that we provide them in our training. So if you're looking to just learn this stuff and kind of get a grasp of it, just check out our blog and check out the blogs that we're publishing there. And if you're interested in actually getting the mentorship and actually working one-on-one with us, then check out our programs and you can apply there. And when you do that, you'll either get on the phone with me or someone from my team to talk more about the program and whether it'd be a good fit for you.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, thank you so much. For all those listening, go to tommorkes.com/podcast to catch this latest episode, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.